So a little bit about our perspective here. The question we're going to try and answer today is how can you conduct resource management to consistently achieve KPI targets using Kantata? And in this presentation, I'm going to stay at a relatively high level. I don't have like super intense slides. We're not going to go do walkthroughs in the app about here's how you can drag and drop to create a scheduled hour, and here's a bulk action that's available. Instead, we're going to talk a little bit more about why you should be doing scheduling, why you should be doing allocating, what the differences between those are, how they can work together nicely, and what personas sort of play into each hour type, and how those can be managed throughout your organization. Sarah's going to join us near the end of the conversation. Her and I are going to have a Q&A that's really meant to allow Sarah to share her perspective about how POP has implemented the tool. She's got good oversight and coverage over how their project delivery, as well as their resource management functions. And so I think her perspective is going to be really unique and really vital to helping drive some of the value of this conversation. All right, so what are we going to focus on? From a resource planning and scheduling return on investment standpoint, I think there's really three key areas that we're looking to improve. The first being billable utilization. That's better hiring, resource planning, and project management. Ultimately, with billable utilization, we're trying to reduce the amount of idle time people have that are billable resources. We want to deploy our people on projects as much as we can without having them go over their capacity, and really, get the most out of our billable resources to help drive revenue for our firm. The second, related to resource planning and scheduling, is on-time delivery. More accurate and complete scheduling and project management can ultimately lead to more products being delivered. If we can deliver more products, we can ultimately drive more revenue for the business as well, right? If we're able to sort of complete work on time, we can reduce the turnaround time to then start the next project. We reduce those delays, we can start things on time, we get more throughput, and ultimately drive more revenue for our organization. So having that view of really project delivery oriented scheduling with start dates, with due dates at a more granular level helps us to ensure that our projects are going to be delivered on time and on budget so that we can ultimately maximize our output as an organization. And then the third that we're going to, we won't talk too much about today, but certainly is a typical KPI related to resource planning and scheduling is time to staff. The turnaround time from when a project goes into the system until the resources are scheduled on that project. Ultimately, this can allow an increase in the number of engagements that we can deliver if we're able to reduce the amount of idle time we have with open roles waiting to be staffed on a project. This is sort of that relationship between project manager and resource manager, right? Where I have demand structured and now I need to get people on my projects. If that time extends for too long, we jeopardize the start dates of those projects. We maybe even jeopardize, pushing out other projects because of that. So really, if we have that tighter time to staff, we can deliver more projects on time. For today, we're going to focus mainly on billable utilization and on-time delivery as our two key metrics that we're looking to improve by having better process around resource planning and scheduling. So that's my perspective. That's Kantata's perspective. That's what we've heard from customers. I want to bring in some data from the SPI. That's a little bit more third party, some survey data, some benchmark data that they've done from their reports. And the first thing that you're seeing on this screen is, from their perspective, a survey that they've sent out to a couple hundred professional services organizations that actually asks the question, what's the most important PSA module when you're looking to implement a PSA? The respondents in that survey, you'll notice I've highlighted number 2 and number 3 on this list: resource planning, project staffing, and scheduling. That's 2 of the top 3 modules that your peers, professionals in the services industry are ranking as this is like top value that we think we should be achieving when we implement a PSA. And I figured it was a little bit important to define the difference between resource planning and project staffing and scheduling. From our perspective, resource planning is that process of identifying, forecasting, and allocating those best fit resources for a single project or a portfolio of projects. It's a little bit longer term view. It's a little bit more strategic and high level. It could even include hiring decisions, skill up leveling, right? A little bit more of the resource management, long-term strategic decision making versus project staffing and scheduling is a little bit more tactical, right? Having the right person on the right job at the right time with the right skills so that we can ultimately complete our scheduled deliverables and milestones. And we have dates associated with those so that we can ensure that we have that on-time delivery. So I really wanted to highlight this just to kind of emphasize the importance of these modules, the importance of implementing and deploying and adopting the tool set so that you can really take advantage of some of the benefits. Now, the next thing I'll share is a survey we did in conjunction with SPI for the culmination of 2022 data. I'm introducing the model here. The next two slides, you'll see the impact that improvement in billable utilization and on-time delivery can have in terms of a dollar value for your organization. So in this survey, we surveyed over 80 plus professional services organizations. The average employee size at these companies was 376, with about 73.5% of those being billable resources. If we take an annual hours of 2,000, which is about a standard 40-hour work week with a couple weeks worth of time off, and an hourly bill rate of $198, which is derived from their services maturity benchmark report, and a project margin pre-PSA of 32.4%. So no need to memorize these numbers. This is just a reference so that when we see the next couple of tables, this is kind of where that model is being driven from. What we're ultimately trying to improve with tighter resource scheduling and resource allocating is an increase in billable utilization. So if we look on the left, we have our key performance indicators, billable utilization, our hours that are billable, revenue that's driven from it, project margin being constant throughout, and an annual project profit. Now, what I want you to focus on are these middle two columns, right? We have a pre-PSA, what those values were from the survey respondents. We have a post-PSA implementation results and data from those respondents. I understand, hey, there's more that goes into billable utilization than just scheduling and allocating, but we know that this is one of those key drivers for improving your billable utilization is getting your people on projects, deploying them on time, right? So when we look at this, the figures are pretty, outstanding, right? Pre-PSA, about 66% on average is their billable utilization figure. And post-PSA deployment, about 74%, an 8% improvement. What that translates to is over 150 additional hours that are billable per each resource. And ultimately, that can lead to an increase in about $9 million in revenue, which trickles down to nearly $3 million in profit. So yes, it's not a small change in billable utilization, but I think it's certainly an achievable one. And this 74%. It's still maybe not even best in class in terms of utilization, but a significant improvement from not having any process or any rigor around your resource planning and scheduling. The second one I want to share with you is the example for improvement in on-time delivery. So same, KPIs on the left side here, but as we look pre-PSA and post-PSA with revenue not changing here, if we're able to increase our on-time delivery from 75% to 82% of projects, that can help us drive an additional $6 million in revenue. And that's simply from being able to, commit to more work and deliver more work, take on more projects because we're reducing that lag time between projects. And when we're on time with our projects, we can roll off of existing ones and on to new ones. It really creates this synergy between the sales team and the delivery team. And the resource management team ultimately kind of sits as that overlay that allows you to kind of have that efficient process from We start a project, we finish it on time, we roll on to the next one. And we have a view not just of what it looks like today or next week, but several months out into the future so that we can plan our resources accordingly to make appropriate commitments with customers. So trickling down from $6 million improved in revenue, that ultimately equates to over $2 million in profit. So in total, right, if we're able to, I'm going to go back one, increase our billable utilization, that can translate to almost $3 million in improved profit and $2 million from on-time delivery. That's an over $5 million change in profit and bottom line for our organization by really just focusing on, we need the right people at the right time. We've got to get them scheduled. We've got to get them allocated. And we need to stay aligned on how our resources are deployed, and not just from a, are our employees happy? Obviously, that's a really important piece of this, but is this profitable for our business the way we're operating? So when it comes to Kantata, I think the last couple slides were meant to demonstrate the value in doing so. Now the question is, how do we do things in Kantata? We have a lot of content and material that kind of shows you how to. I won't spend this valuable time just kind of talking about how do we create hours. So check out our knowledge base if you have more kind of how-to questions, or feel free to pop them in the Q&A. And if we don't get to them today, we can certainly follow up. But at a high level here, we have several different hour types that allow you to stay at a high level project level. That's our allocated hours, or drill down into the task level and actually schedule people's time for deliverables on projects. And that's our scheduled hours. So allocated hours, oftentimes we see resource managers leverage allocated hours that help set clear expectations for how many hours a contributor is slated to work on a single project. This allows the RMs to plan further out in advance. It's sort of that peanut butter spread. I'm maybe not quite sure what the statement of work looks like yet. We maybe don't have the work breakdown structure in Kantata yet, but I do know, after talking with our sales team and looking at the pipeline, that I probably need this type of person for this amount of time on this project. That allows me to then kind of go out and plan further in advance, have a more forecasted view. And then as project details come in, we start to schedule, I can make some slight adjustments to those allocations if necessary. Really leveraged mostly by our resource managers so that they have that view across many projects, a portfolio of projects, but have it for one person, right? Scheduled hours are often leveraged by our project managers. Project managers typically will schedule at the task level within start and due dates so that they can ensure they have on-time delivery for the deliverables on their project. This ultimately enables the PM to achieve timing and budget targets without resource capacity disruption. So the PMs are going to be a lot more tactical. They're going to be closer to the project deliverables. Maybe it's milestones. Maybe you schedule at the task level, right? There's a couple of different ways to do that, but this is a much more granular view so that you can really stay tight with the timing of the project, and you can ensure that you have the right people on the project for the right amount of time to deliver the work that you've committed to. Now, the question I often receive from many customers is, how do these both work together? And ultimately, I think whether you're doing sort of a top down, we start with allocated hours and then we move to a more granular scheduled hour once we get more project details, or we lead with the work breakdown structure. We have those tasks in there, and then we want to allocate based on what we've scheduled. Both ways are certainly viable approaches. What we want to ensure is that the resource managers can conduct that longer term planning, and oftentimes allocations help mirror what maybe scheduled hours should be at a high level on a project. And then they can make those appropriate adjustments when project managers ultimately schedule and request extensions or changes on projects. This gives the resource manager clear signal that, hey, I need to change these allocations. And when I change it based on what's been scheduled, I can now see where maybe future conflicts might arise and fight those fires before it's next day, right? Be able to have some advanced planning there. From a project manager perspective, some value in using both If I'm scheduling as a project manager, but I see that my resource manager has allocated hours for people on my projects, well, now I can almost treat those allocated hours like they're budgeted for this project. So I have an idea of what my constraints are. And if I need to schedule more than what's been allocated on any given week or through the duration of the project, I need to coordinate then with that resource manager to ensure that that person can be on my project for a longer period of time. Or on the flip side, right, if we are able to move through that project quickly and we're actually looking to deliver work ahead of time, ahead of what was expected, I can then coordinate with that resource manager to say, hey, look, you might have some additional capacity for this person because I know we said we were going to be done at point A, but actually we're going to be done sooner than that. So this person has some free time opening up. That's ultimately where we want to try and reduce that idle time for that billable resource so that we can continue to really focus on that billable utilization and ensure that they're deployed. So that's Kantata's perspective. We have these 2 hour types that really help drive more accurate, more precise resource planning, resource management. We see customers that are successful in this area really are able to hone in on their billable utilization and hone in on their on-time delivery and drive that improved revenue and bottom line. For the last 5 to 10 minutes here, I want to take some time to have a question and answer with Sara Giuffrida. Sara is the SVP of Delivery at POP, one of our great customers. And she's got a great perspective on how POP has really instrumented the usage of both scheduled and allocated hours. I want you to hear that from one of your peers, and hopefully it validates some of the material that I've shared with you in the first half of this presentation. So Sara, thanks for joining.
Hi, thank you.
My first question is, can you walk me through how POP uses both scheduled and allocated hours to make more informed resource planning decisions?
Yes, definitely. So we support a variety of different projects at POP. So we definitely do our project planning at, well, say, the micro task level, where we are assigning hours at the individual task level, as well as at the weekly level. So we do have very detailed project plans and then also more retainer-like engagements. And the resourcing plan we use supports both those really well. For us, it really starts with the PM going in and building out their project plan within the tool. When doing that, they start by first adding estimated hours. We love estimated hours because it provides a great baseline that we use daily and as a way to look back to really assess project performance at the department level, at the project level, et cetera. Once the estimated hours are in, then we go in and the PM assigns scheduled hours. Once scheduled hours are in, and I should caveat this with, this is all using unassigned roles. So we have a resource manager at POP. We haven't always had a resource manager, but we have one now. I've lived through both worlds. I can definitely speak to that. And we thought it's very, very valuable to have one hub, one person that can holistically look at all the requests coming from the PM team to help navigate and make decisions in the best interest of the agency, our clients, and our projects. So once the PM goes in, they have their estimated hours, they have their scheduled hours on unassigned roles. We then use our project status to communicate back and forth with resourcing. So we have 4 project status types: ready, active, done, and in planning. When a PM is ready to flip the switch, that we say, to send it to resourcing, we switch the status to ready. And that's an indication that it's now for resourcing to take the PM's request, look at what's available, look at the skills that are needed, and start to map that out. So sometimes it's a very easy mapping. We need 8 hours on a designer. We have 8 hours available. Resourcing then goes in and hard allocates that time. So they convert the scheduled time to a hard allocation. Sometimes it's more complicated and we need to have a follow-up conversation with our discipline leads to really figure out what is the best person for this particular ask. In that scenario, we might use a soft allocation where we're putting forth a possible recommendation and want to have visibility to what that might look like holistically within our larger resourcing planner. So those are the different ways we use the soft and the hard allocations. We also use soft allocations for in-planning projects. So an in-planning project for us would be a project where we're maybe waiting on an SOW. We're pretty sure it's going to come, but it's not 100% legit yet. We will use an in-planning status and soft allocations so we have visibility. We're also not moving mountains and changing and disrupting other work to help staff that project, because we know it's a in planning project.
Hmm. Yeah, excellent. A lot of best practices in there. So thanks for sharing that. I'm curious too, you said you didn't always have a resource manager. I'm curious about how did you previously plan for resources? What was the transition like to get PMs and RMs more connected and engaged with this resource planning process?
Yeah, so I've lived through a few different models. One was we did not have a resourcing model, and really I don't say the burden, but the task was left on the PMs to meet with discipline leads, and we had a mega meeting source, and it was a bit of a free for all. People were going in, putting forth their recommendations, and bartering and trading for resources, and then just doing, making assignments in terms of their best interest or what they thought was in the best interest of the project. That was really challenging for us. And so when we then decided to move to a homegrown tool, is the first time we actually introduced the idea of a resource manager. And at the time, we couldn't, for lack of a better term, afford a dedicated resource manager. So it was someone within our agency who also wore different hats. And at this point, we were only resourcing at the weekly level. So we didn't have the ability to do day and week resourcing. But we did start to see the value of having a centralized system and an unbiased party kind of owning and helping facilitate conversations and make decisions for the agency and for our teams. Now we do have a resource manager, and it's fantastic. I would never look back. They still balance a couple other jobs within our agency based on our current size. But when we were, a few years ago, when we were a little larger, we actually had 3 resource managers. So we've kind of scaled up and scaled down based on the needs that we have. But it's fantastic because they can provide a little calm to the chaos. When you have passionate PMs and passionate discipline leads, they can come in and really look at it from a data standpoint, from the numbers and facilitate the right conversation.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned a little bit about numbers there. So I'm curious, what type of sort of business outcomes or KPIs are you looking to achieve when you're talking about resource planning and trying to become more accurate and precise with that process?
Yeah, you definitely hit on some of the big ones. I would say for us, it was predictability and confidence in our project plans. We now feel more confident and can provide our clients with more of a stable project plan because we know we have visibility to what's needed to hit certain milestones and deadlines. Before, when we were resourcing just at the weekly view, you might have a team member who has 40 hours on their schedule, but all of their work is due on a Wednesday. And that would cause big conflicts and big issues that wouldn't surface until those moments hit. Now we have the ability to proactively get ahead of that, to have the right conversations, to balance our team members' week. So for us, it's better tight project planning for our clients. It's also better for our team members, those engaging on the work, because they feel more confident in their schedule and the balance of their schedule throughout the week. Staffing and utilization is a huge piece of this. So we love the visibility this gives us in terms of seeing what are the roles and skills that we might be really leaning on right now and need to start thinking about opening recs for, or what are, what's the reverse of that? So what are the roles that maybe are underutilized right now? And how do we proactively pitch work that maybe will leverage those teams more to really maximize and fill those downs and the peaks and valleys that I think we all experience in this type of work. And then tighter project planning means tighter budget management. So using the estimated hours has been fantastic because we can reflect back and say, okay, was our estimate off? Was this individual resource just maybe a little less efficient at the task? Why did we go over? Where exactly did we go over? And we do not track time at the task level. I will say we track time just at the project level. So even at that level of detail, we still feel like we can get really good insights to have great pause and learn conversations once a project wraps to really understand how did it perform.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing all that. Awesome insights to share with the audience here. My last question, this one actually came in from the audience, and then I want to take one more if we've got time, if that's all right, Gerald. I'm curious, Sarah, what are some typical reports that you leverage? Maybe it's insights reports that are related to resource planning. Anything custom, or is it sort of out of the box where you find value? Can you share what that's like?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So we have a ton of utilization views. We love utilization dashboards, being able to drill down into team size specifically, and getting the granularity of what was this individual scheduled, what were they allocated, and what did they actually use. That's really telling for us, because we know schedules push, we know things change, but that has an immediate impact on utilization, which obviously impacts our overall profitability as an agency. So we really focus on being able to see, what was allocated and assigned and what was actually used. We also have a custom PM dashboard view that we find really valuable. That gives us a good insight in terms of being able to track hours at a really granular level.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Super helpful there. And I know we've got a plethora of insights reports, and I know a lot of our customers will customize all those reports to meet their needs. So interesting to hear there's kind of a balance between both a custom approach as well as some of those out of the box reports you find helpful. Let me see. I'm just looking. We've got a lot of awesome Q&A coming in. If we don't get to your question, I know we're coming up on time here, Gerald. Just tell me when I need to stop talking. But we'll absolutely follow up after this session, and I think do some direct answers to the questions that have rolled in. We won't miss any. So thank you so much for your participation, Sarah. It was great having you on the call today, and thanks to all the members in the audience. Hopefully this was helpful in understanding some of the value in resource planning, the value in scheduling and allocating, and how the relationship between those hour types. Hope to see you at more events like this. And like I said, my door is always open. So if you do have questions, feel free to reach out directly to me.